Then in Sports Central, we go for our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Iowa State Cyclones, a team that went 4-8 overall in the 2022 season. Bit of a down season for Iowa State. Battle this team being 2023, and what can we expect out of the Cyclones in this upcoming season is what we'll be talking about here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predict their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. Once again, the record being 4-8. This was a team that has been a decent contender in the Big 12 the past few years. Matt Campbell has really led this team to some great success for Iowa State. I mean, you consider this is usually a bottom feeder in the Big 12. It really hasn't been too bad the past few years, but 2022 definitely was. You could say the worst season since probably 2016. It's been a while since this team hasn't been to a bowl game. This team actually was in 5 straight bowl games before the 2022 season. So going 4-8 was a bit disappointing, but it was a promising start to the season. We saw this team have dominant wins over Southeast Missouri and Ohio. Also beat Iowa 10-7. I mean, Iowa's offense was atrocious last season. Their defense was good, but it was just their offense that was terrible, and Iowa State managed to barely get by on that one. And I mean, that was kind of the same story for Iowa State. This offense really struggled, I think, for the majority of the season, and defensively they really showed potential. It was just the offense, and especially in the Big 12 conference, that you have to have a strong offense in. Just didn't work out for Iowa State last year. I mean, they after the Ohio win, they went on a 5-game losing streak, losing to Baylor by a touchdown. They lost to Kansas by 3, lost to Kansas State by 1, lost to Texas by 3. All 4 of those losses there were all super close. Iowa State could have won 1 or 2 of those for sure, and all those were against good football teams. I mean, it's crazy to call Kansas a good football team, but they were a solid team last season. So, I mean, that 3-point loss there was disappointing, but I mean, Iowa State kept it close, and they lost to Oklahoma by a couple of touchdowns. Beat West Virginia 31-14. That was an impressive win there. And then lost their last 3 games to Oklahoma State by 6, to Texas Tech by 4. 2 more close losses there. And then lost to TCU 62-14 to finish out the regular season. So obviously that game kind of got away from Iowa State. But otherwise, this team just suffered a lot of close losses last season. And so, I mean, this team could have been far better than 4-8. They just couldn't get it done in a lot of those close games. This could have been a 6-6, 7-5 team last year. It was just those close losses that came back to bite in the end. But with that, let's take a look into 2023 now with your roster preview. And Hunter Dekkers is coming back, starting quarterback of this team, which, I mean, he wasn't bad last year, but obviously we knew that this offense was going to be a bit inexperienced. Obviously losing Brock Purdy, who turns out to be a pretty good quarterback from what we saw to him and the 49ers this past season when he stepped up to the plate. So, I mean, and we knew he led this team to some big success at Iowa State, so losing him was going to be tough. And you can't forget about Breece Hall, who was an outstanding running back for this team. And, I mean, this team didn't really have – I mean, it's so tough to replace a guy like Breece Hall, and this backfield really showed that. We saw Jarrell Brock be the lead rusher with right around 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, multiple backs, split time in the backfield this past season. Deion Salas was the third in the backfield. He is transferring out, but you got Cartevious Norton and then Jarrell Brock both coming back. So, I mean, this offense will be more experienced here in 2023, which is definitely a good thing. We saw this team be a bit inexperienced offensively, and that's really why this team struggled. But I think having a few of these key playmakers coming back for 2023 is huge, and we should definitely see some improvement. Xavier Hutchinson, though, is gone. That is definitely the biggest loss of this offense. He put up nearly 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns last year at the receiver. So that's going to be tough losing him, but at least you got Jalen Noel coming back. Same with Dimitri Stanley. Even Deshaun Hunnick is coming back, who was your top tight end. So there's a lot of potential on this offense. I definitely think things will be improved. I mean, the experience in general is going to be so much better. So that's definitely a good sign for this team. You lose 1 on the O-line. Defensively, there's a few losses as well. 2 on the D-line, 3 linebackers, and then 2 in the secondary. So, I mean, it brings up the question, though, could this team return to contention in 2023? And I'll say this as well. You consider those close losses from last season. This team was 4-8 last year, but they could have been much better than that. So you consider that with those close losses. This could have been a 6, 7, 8 win team last year, so you got to consider that as well. And this team has got more experience now. I think Matt Campbell is an outstanding coach. You can't count this team out. They could be a true dark horse in the Big 12 in 2023. I do think that there are better teams than Iowa State for sure in the conference, but I think this team definitely has got the potential to make some improvement for sure. But looking at your transfer portal and recruiting now, which this team hasn't been terribly active in the transfer portal, you do lose 5 key players in a way. None of these 5 players had significant impacts. Like they weren't major playmakers, but they did have an impact in a way. Deion Silas, the third in the backfield for this team, off to Rhode Island. Sean Shaw Jr. is off to Texas State. Blake Peterson, defensive lineman, is off to South Dakota State. You also lose Tavon Kyle, defensive back, to Virginia, and then Mason Chambers off to Incarnate Word. And then, of course, Zachary Levette's coming in. He is your probably the most significant player coming in from the transfer portal. He's coming in from Missouri. You can expect him to have an immediate impact in the linebacking situation. Recruiting-wise, not too bad. 43rd in the country, 7th in the Big 12. So that puts you in the top half of the Big 12. Barely not too bad. You got 1 4-star coming in and then 21 3-stars. I've still got this team at an 8 out of 10 on the future forecast meter. I think the future is bright for this team as long as Matt Campbell's around. And he has proven that he can lead this team to success. And I mean, there's no hiding that Iowa State's a team that over the years, when you consider the past 3-4 decades, this usually has been a bottom feeder team in the Big 12. And what Matt Campbell has done, leading this team even into Big 12 contention, I mean, it's very impressive what he's done, and you can't count out this team for sure. And I think the future is bright for this team. But with that, let's take a look at the 2023 schedule now. So you start the season against Northern Iowa. That's a home game. Your first 2 games are at home against Northern Iowa there, and then Iowa, which the Hawkeyes, I do think they're no joke in 2023. I mean, you got a huge win against them last season, a very impressive win going to Iowa City there, but Iowa's going to be a better team this season. Offensively, they will be a lot better. They've finally got a decent quarterback in Cade McNamara, so they're not relying on Spencer Petras anymore, so they'll be better. So keep an eye on that one. And then Ohio on the road. Then you've got Oklahoma State at home, Oklahoma on the road. So you got a trip to Norman to finish out September. You got TCU at home to start out October. Then to Cincinnati. Yeah, that's your first game against one of the new Big 12 teams. You got to play 2 of the newcomers in Cincinnati, and then against BYU. You got Baylor on the road, then Kansas at home to start out November, then BYU on the road, Texas at home, and then Kansas State on the road to finish out the regular season. So it's definitely a challenging schedule. You also got to consider Iowa's probably going to be a 9 or 10 win team here in 2023. So that is not a game to sleep on for sure. But looking at September, I think he beat Northern Iowa pretty easily. But the problem is with Iowa, it's going to be a different story. I do think the Hawks get the win this year. It is a home game for the Cyclones, which is nice. But once again, having Cade McNamara in there now, the Michigan transfer quarterback, Iowa's offense should be better. And defensively, we'll see what they can do on defense. I don't think their defense will be quite as good in 2023, but there's still a lot of potential there. They tend to rebuild pretty well defensively. So I think that's a tough one there, a close game, but give me the Hawks in the end. You go to Ohio, you beat them pretty easily, then Oklahoma State. I think the Cowboys are kind of a mediocre 6-win team or so next season, so I do think you get a nice win there against them in a close one. So you're 3-1 heading into your second month. Trip to Norman here against Oklahoma. I do think that you'd lose this one. The Sooners will be better in 2023. I think last season, new head coach, there definitely was a bit of inexperience as well. A lot of players left, so I think it makes sense for last season to be kind of a down year for Oklahoma, but I do see them being a contender once again in 2023 in the Big 12. So I'm going to take them there, a close but tough loss there. And then TCU at home. I do think TCU falls off a decent amount. I think that they just lost too many of their key players to remain a big contender. So I can get a nice win there against TCU. And then Cincinnati on the road. I kind of went back and forth on this one, but once again, if you've watched any of my recent videos, I think Cincinnati is definitely a team that should be very much in a rebuild phase in 2023. Just no more Luke Fickell. That's a team that also lost a lot of talent after last season. They're going to be a pretty young team in 2023, so I do think they struggled to even get the 6 wins, which is crazy because, yeah, just a couple of years ago, they were in the college football playoff. But I think you beat them there, and then Baylor on the road. This one's pretty much a 50-50 game, but I do want to favor Baylor in a close game there. So you're 5-3 heading into November. You're in a pretty good position. If you're a 5-win team heading into November, all you need is a win to get to a bowl game, and I think you do that. I think you beat Kansas at home. BYU on the road is a very winnable game. I do think BYU is a beatable team. I see them kind of right around the same level as Iowa State next year. And so I do want to favor the Cougars. I think them being at home as well, it's a tougher place to play and definitely a unique environment for the Big 12. But I'm going to take BYU there, and then Texas and Kansas State, two tough teams. I mean, your big three in the Big 12 for me next season are Texas, Kansas State, and Oklahoma. And I think Texas, you got them at home, so you got a chance for a really nice upset win there. But I do want to favor the Longhorns there, and then Kansas State on the road. Maybe a close game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State pulled a big upset at some point next season, but we'll see, and I do want to favor Kansas State there. I still think that Will Howard, that's going to be a solid team once again in 2023. So I've got 6-6 for the Cyclones, but this is a team with a higher ceiling as well. I've got 9-3 for the ceiling, and I still think this team has got some work to do. I mean, last season, this team was still 4-8. You can't forget about that, and even though a lot of the losses were close for this team, this was still a 4-8 team. So I do think that we see this team still kind of rebuilding in 2023. I definitely think there's improvement. I'd be stunned if this team wasn't a 6+ win team in 2023, even 5+. They should at least get 5 wins in 2023 for sure. Otherwise, that would be definitely concerning. But I've got 9-3 for the ceiling. There's a lot of potential on this team, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Iowa State can do. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on the Cyclones. It's definitely an interesting team. And yeah, stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll catch you on the next one.